Welcome to the J3U University podcast. I'm your host, John Jewett.
And I'm your co-host, Luke Miller.
Our mission is to elevate the physique coaching standard
and to bring the highest level of competitor to the stage.
Let's jump into today's episode. Female growth. This is why you might be staying the same. Luke and I today, we want to dive into all the reasons that might be limiting you as a female from really growing. And don't worry, guys out there, don't tune off too quickly, as a lot of the topics we're going to cover today absolutely are going to carry over to yourself and why you might not be seeing the progress you want you come to stage. And or maybe you can give some insight for your significant other and let them just relay the tips over to them. So Luke has become nearly our female expert. You're the next, I think your client roster now is nearly a bunch of female pros, but so it'll be good to pick your brain, Luke, a little more on this topic as you come across more of these issues in the offseason and made significant progress in your females. So it'll be good to hear kind of what takeaways that you might have really shifted for those females and been able to progress them forward.
Yeah, it was funny. I was looking at my roster the other day and I have something like 6 WPD pros and like a bunch of wellness pros and like all these people like close to winning pro cards in wellness and figure. And I've actually got a handful of figure pros as well. I think I'm at like 7 or 8. So, it's been like interesting to see the shift in the dynamic. But I think it's this podcast could turn into like the clickbaity reel. That's like, are you not eating enough in off season? Like, are you afraid to eat and are eating the bikini diet, right? But I think from a barriers mistake perspective, like when we look at what actually kind of limits a lot of these girls is, I think there's one of like inputs from like outside perspectives, which we'll get into from in a second. I think that's one to manage heavily in this realm. But I think the biggest thing is learning how to shift focus in different sections of the seasons. And I think that starts with training and having a good relationship with training of like what good training actually looks like, because that seems to be the biggest differential across the spectrum. And I know like common barriers, we're going to have to cover mindset and recovery and nutrition and PEDs and talk about all these things and hormone profiles. And I think HRT is another one that needs to be discussed. But the massive difference in how people approach training across the female classes is where I think the most progress gets left on the table, whether it's on the bikini wellness side, doing these dainty kickback stuff excessively and not like executing large compounds to get the most amount of growth benefit, or it's like on some of the more aggressive training side, like we're flinging things and creating not enough mechanical tension but moving a lot of load for the camera. Like, it's just such a wide spectrum in this realm. Like I find it's the largest spectrum of training capacity or training skill, I should say, across like female competing.
Yeah. I mean, that answers kind of the first question that we had is, why do many females athletes stall in the off season? I think that'll get in a little bit more to maybe some of our other things around pushing body weight up as you need to, but kind of jumped into our second question here and asking this is like, well, it's part of a bit, right? Of the first two. It is the biggest off-season mistake that happens in females. And so you're saying training is a big piece of that. And are you seeing training mistakes that are, you mentioned some that are unique to females with a lot of the bikini wellness, just doing more pump type workouts, a lot of volume. So you see like an overdoing of volume in those areas. What else are you seeing as far as like the execution side? Because I feel like that's just such a under prioritized area.
Like let's talk wellness specific here, right? And I think this concept applies to women's physique and figure with some other body parts like delts and lats. But the concept that we're trying to say here is like not really actually understanding what positions load these muscle groups. Like wanting the glute development, but their primary compound is like a wide stance, abducted, externally rotated goblet squat where they hold a dumbbell under them. It's like you are getting a great squeeze at the top because you can just tuck your pelvis and like squeeze the heck out of your glutes. But like, we're not even putting you in positions to maximally load a glute or do this safely. Like that's another one. The amount of lower back injuries in these classes, like just from poor squatting and poor pelvic control. Like we're not going to send me down the bird dog rabbit hole, but I think that's like number one is like understanding what positions actually load these muscle fibers, because like even I'm coaching Jasmine Baker now, and she's a great athlete. Like she does everything I ask. But like she was dealing with so much lower back pain and like not being able to get a lot of glute out of her training. And it's like in the first few weeks, fixing how she manages rib cage to pelvis and then putting her in the right positions in a squat, she not only squatted pain free, but it's just like the amount of glute stimulus from that one movement, just that one squat, is like more robust than almost the entirety of training. And she's someone who's competed at the highest level when it comes to wellness. So it's like, you take someone like that and teach that training, like the sky's the limit for someone like her with something like that. But that's across the board, is just a misunderstanding and application of training and execution to actually accomplish the goal you're trying to accomplish is like the skill that's so missing.
You can have the perfect plan on paper, but if it's not applied in the way that we intend to it to be, you could be missing the mark so much. That's when likely you see a few things. For one, a lot of chasing the feel off of movements. So you just, well, I don't feel this, so I'll try to feel it in this way. And a lot of times that's just a lot of short loading, like pump band type work. Or it just leads to excessive volume taking place. And hang in there, ladies. At the end of all this, we're going to give you some solutions that Luke and I have created for you. But, and I had a WPD client that she's like, I do these hip thrusts, I don't ever feel my glutes. It's like, it's not, the hip thrust was not the right exercise for her. She was just going into like excessive like lumbar flexion and driving like her feet away from her, and she just needed like the right bracing setup and the right cue, like two simple things that I gave her. And it was like eyes like, popping out of her head, like, whoa, like light bulb off, like there's my glutes. So a lot of times it comes down to some like video review needs to happen and a comparison to like what it should look like, then also given some good instruction and the right cues. Because you can try to mirror a lot of this stuff all day long, but sometimes you just do need the right external cue to help create the true application there. I do think as well, you now have females that copy a lot of programs off other females that are saying on Instagram, but then you also have a lot of the male programs that are just passed down to females, which like, hey, the big tenets of hypertrophy apply here, but females are different in certain aspects. Definitely like the recovery piece I've seen is still pretty huge. If you do get females outputting at a pretty high level, I think that gap closes some. However, I've still seen across the board, like the frequency and total volume level that a female can handle is still slightly higher than what a guy can handle. And I think that's too, is like for the wellness side, you could definitely, if you have a guy programming, like he would program his own leg training. If you're only training legs once a week, it's like, man, you're going to be way underdoing what a female could actually handle. Like for Renee, she could train legs nearly every other day. And for me, that would just decimate me. So yeah, I think passing on the male program to the female, which I think that might be closer, what do you think, to like what you would see in figure in WPD potentially done?
Yeah, and I have a lot of pet peeves when it comes to that. Like I even sat with Colton and rewrote a WPD program design the other day, or he rewrote it, but we went over some tenets of like, just because these are the more muscular female divisions, does it mean that this training looks anything close to what a bodybuilder is doing? I think there's class-specific stuff you have to consider about how different their poses are, what's actually graded towards their criteria, that skew those landmarks differently than how you would in bodybuilding. So, yeah, it's so bad in the figure WPD world of like doing the boyfriend or the husband's training, or I was handed a program design that is similar to what a bodybuilder's doing and just expected to progress on that. And it's like, you're wasting so much recovery capacity on what could be more physique progress that matches your class standard, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's just I mean, that's just touching on the training piece, but I think that is the greatest tool you have to change your physique and where the greatest emphasis should be. And making sure like you do get away from pump work and you are focusing on progressing your stimulus, tracking your lifts, and making sure those main core lifts are moving up across the board. And a lot of times they're more basic looking programs, to be honest. Just a lot of the movements that work are the ones that should be in place, that are like your squats, your hip hinges, unilateral movements. Like it's just basic stuff. It's not needing to reinvent the wheel. Just continue to execute those better. And then as you're adapting, those loads, reps are kind of organically moving up. Outside the training pieces, there is kind of a lot to cover here. I think we need to address the mindset, I think, first, because I feel like that's a trap for a lot of the females of getting with body image, scale obsession, or fear of fat gain and stall would absolutely be like a big limiter that I see in females in the off season. And a lot of that has to start post show, of like having a properly set up program to where you understand the expectations, you're guided into a position that you can successfully execute the post show and not leave you 6-8 weeks down the road not recovered in what you need to be able to start your off season, from a hormonal aspect, from a mental aspect, and from a body fat standpoint. So there's a lot to that, but I think that where that all goes wrong is you have the female that's not guided well, gains a lot of body fat, mentally then gets in a poor spot, and then you spend a lot of the off season really just kind of eating maintenance calories, and that's not the position you really want to be in. So where we really need to see the off season happen is being able to progressively increase body weight and have that linearly scale with you progressively and getting stronger in the gym. So I think where a lot of this mindset shift needs to happen is back to training to a degree. And making sure like that is your priority point in the off season, that you are fueling a female to grow and in that way perform in the gym and be able to recover. So your training is kind of your checkbox that needs to happen first. Like, is my training progressing? And then looking, are you also moving up in body weight? And if those things are happening, that's great. But a lot of times, right, we don't see those things happening when females come to us. It's like a lot of stagnation and just maintenance across the off season.
Yeah, and I think this mindset comes with a few things that can be mismanaged that are like outside of the gym factors too. I almost see this portion as like the second low-hanging fruit. Like if I had to choose, like we had all these apples to choose from, right? Like if I had two low-hanging fruits to choose from, it would be the relationship with body composition, mindset, and being able to manage that through hormonal considerations and nutrition considerations, depending on where someone is, and then the training piece. And these are like my two low-hanging fruits, where I think we can continue down the mindset of competing and like potentially being a rate limiter for competitors getting to the highest level, is maybe understanding the path of what this looks like on the outside the gym factors in regards to not only the standard of execution, but John, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because I know this is one that I weekly have conversations with people wanting to get to the highest level around this, how to appropriately manage hormone profiles with these females as they progress into competing, the deeper into competing they get. Because obviously we have the female module where we cover like the in-depth nitty-gritty piece of this, right? But just like hit the highlights of like these outside the gym factors can so negatively affect your ability to manage body composition, to run progressive off seasons, that I think that almost goes hand in hand with the training as like the two lowest hanging fruit of like how someone manages outside the gym factors alongside how we provide that stimulus.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to today's podcast. Are you struggling to hit your peak on show day? Feeling lost in the offseason? Upgrade your coaching game with J3 University. Our program covers everything from offseason to contest prep to peak week, all based from real client results. Along with our comprehensive physique curriculum, you'll also get access to our 4 rooms with our J3U team to answer any questions you have and live Q&A sessions to further your coaching and athlete experience. We are the source of education for top IFBB pros and coaches. Join us to elevate the coaching standard at J3 University. Let's get back to today's podcast. Yeah, I mean, I think for where it could cross over with a lot of the males is going to be keeping the consistent routine, almost like a prep-like structure, but with flexibility that still aligns with allowing the physique to progress week to week. So that aspect doesn't change. But I like you bringing up around the hormonal considerations, those are unique to males, and one kind of outside the gym factor that sometimes is not looked at a lot, or it's very complicated as well. It's so much more complicated than a male's hormone management, and either it's not looked at when I see people come over, or it's inappropriately managed, and managed also like just a mini man protocol, because you have a lot of guys that are just giving out protocols around that. But I can't even tell you, like Renee's doing all lifestyle coaching now, right? And every female that's come with all the labs that I see, there is some skewing of a hormone profile, and she is symptomatic in some way around having issues with her menstrual cycle, or around the time of menstrual cycle, or having issues around GI function, or her like cognitive state. And all those things are intermingled. I think a lot of people can look at this as like separate buckets of like, you have your female that, you know, she trains, there's the physique, there's all those parts. Then you have this like menstrual cycle over here that happens. And it's like how these things, they are absolutely all integrated, and you have to be able to understand how that works. Because if you don't have a female that's in a more optimal reproductive state, that you have to keep in mind, that's going to be the optimal recovery state, is it's like the pinnacle of female health and wellness. So all the hormone fluctuations that need to happen with rise of estrogen and progesterone and testosterone being in place, DHEA, pregnenolone, like all these hormones that are in play have important roles for female in recovery, sleep, cognitive function. Like that's such a big one, is how does someone mentally feel? And a lot of that can be just in disarray from hormones not being in a proper place. So where does it start? Baseline for a female is with looking at symptoms. So you pick that up off your QA, and you know, how does she feel? How is she having, like, around her menstrual cycles? Are they been normal? What has been her past history? Is she on birth control? Birth control is huge. Like, we have some females that Renee came through the door with that, you know, we look at their hormones, we're like, what's going on here? And they just don't, they've been on birth control since they were like 16. She had like, one girl had one menstrual cycle, then her mom put her on birth control. As just like, that's what you do to manage it. And so it's like, never had a natural cadence to her menstrual cycle, so don't even know what that would be like. Low test levels, not optimal for recovery, you know, synthetic estradiol being present. And it's easy to go down the rabbit hole here, but to reel this back in, like, if you really want to optimize a female, you have to look at their baseline hormone status, and then not practicing beyond your scope, because it's complex, aligning with someone that can help manage you. Like we use Merrick Health with J3U, because they have like over 20 physicians present, and we can have the support there to have a really good overview, and they understand what we need as competitors. But then we can align if that person is appropriate for some HRT or not. And there's other things that we can work on. But that should be a baseline of improving your basic hormone health, not just for physique, but also just how you feel throughout the day. And you would imagine, like, you now have better digestion and better energy, and then better recovery. And so all that translates to better performance. But that's your baseline. From there, then we step into the world of PEDs when appropriate for females, and that's another thing that's going to be unique, just to females. And it's not the use Anavar only on your first thing out the gate. It's also not the mini man cycle of like test EQ win straw. And there is a stepwise approach that should happen.
Yeah.
And an assessment of what that female really wants for their physique and what they consider feminine and what they don't want to see happen and what they want to see happen with fertility or whatever it may be. So not to take this podcast down that rabbit hole, but just hearing me speak to this, you could probably understand quickly that there is a lot of consideration points to be had around this. I think that is a thing that absolutely should be happening for your female to be able to be progressing in the off season. And Luke, maybe I'll throw this back to you because you can touch on probably what you see recovery wise from hormone status and where people kind of need to go eventually if they are considering, hey, I want to have periods because I want fertility, but I'm also going to be competing again in 2 months and then I'm on prep again. And that cycle eventually leads them to a place of what you probably might want to touch on that you see.
Yeah, I think it's, if we're not careful, we're going to get in a rabbit hole here. So I'm going to like hit the highlights because I could talk for, you could send me off on an hour on this, but primary benefits, right? Subjectively, kind of how you feel in the day-to-day being massively improved. This is going to help with emotional and mood regulation. It's going to help with sleep quality. It's going to help with recovery capacity. Number one, and I think this is a bottleneck for a lot of females, and it's where like when you have new things come out that help with fat loss and on the PED side of the equation, it's like it becomes this buzz hype thing within like female competing. But I think a lot of it is derivatives of mismanagement of this is body composition control. Like your ability to manage body fat accumulation is largely linked to this hormone profile state, right? And it's like you get things that help with fat loss, which are great, but become so popular because it's mismanaged on the forefront, right? Like it's mismanaged on how the hormone profile should look and how you replace it through a contest prep and how you bring it back to a normal hormone profile state for a female in an off-season setting and what it looks like to maintain that when PEDs are coming in and out in different phases. And so we're just looking at some level of replacement. We go into the details of how to do this in the female module and you work in conjunction with clinicians as well to kind of help with this. But test, estradiol, progesterone, thyroid therapy are like the top of the line. I'm checking whether that's needed or not. Again, it's not a plug all. It's not you give this to everyone. It's a checking if it's needed type of a situation. And you're just going to get all of these benefits from a body composition management perspective, but also recovery capacity. We talk about like estradiol's role in recovery and being able to manage more volume to drive more progress in an off-season setting. But if someone's been competing long enough and they're using drugs that crash E2, like you're not going to get those benefits as robustly, right? So I think it's something to consider. I think that's like the 1,000-foot view of like benefits and things. But was there anything else you wanted to pull out of that?
I think one thing is that when you're prepping a female, you're going to suppress the HPO axis to a degree.
Yeah.
And some females being more resilient than others, but eventually you might get to a very low hormone status, not just for estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, but it could be even thyroid hormone. And with some being farther away from their body fat set point than others, hunger signaling can really, really be high. And so moving into a post-show period, you're like, all right, cool, we're going to restore hormones. And then how long does that take? In some females that are less resilient, it takes a long time. Mm-hmm. And right when it does happen, it's already time to start the next prep. Mm-hmm. And then you're right back into a situation where you're not able to recover or the hormone axis, or it never did. And so that continuous cycle is going to probably lead some people to eventually have that bottleneck where like things aren't working the same anymore. Like you ran this female, like, hey man, my first 2 shows, like I got conditioned. Now it's like, I'm really struggling now to make that happen. And that's what I see a lot in the female sector is that you can run a few females through these preps, but eventually they're not recovering like they did, or the timelines are getting shorter and shorter as now you're getting in that season where you're trying to requalify for maybe it's nationals, maybe it's now pro shows or Olympia. And so it kind of leads females to a point that for the less resilient female, they might need that hormone support year round. And that could be the limiting factor. So that's kind of the point around a competitor that's unique, and that, you know, the ideal on paper of like, yeah, we're going to recover and get your hormone status back. Like, but when you weigh in competitive goals, you might have to make considerations that HRT might need to be year round to create the hormone stability to execute all phases, have that successful post show into an off season where you can manage body fat in a better place, which is where a lot of females can struggle when they don't have that hormone support present. So yeah, you know, if you don't have that, it's one thing that's just kind of somewhat out of your control to a degree, if that's not working right, because you can be doing all the other things of what you can, you know, control relatively, like your sleep, your training, your nutrition, eating off plan and things, but they're like still like, man, why is my food so low? If I eat a little bit of something off plan, it feels like it sticks to me. It's like, yeah, it could be a consideration where it might be the hormone status that you really do need to address here. But beyond that, so I know the hormone thing can be a rabbit hole, but it's a big one to address.
It is.
I think on the nutrition side, what I just spoke to, that you're going to see like a pretty big discrepancy between, for one, males and females as far as how strict a female might need to be to keep the weekly rate of gain where you want them to. I've had a lot of females in the past that the reality is that food is just not very high for a female because they're going to be a smaller body weight. So like Renee and I, we used to go out for dates and Renee would like match me for food, and it's not the same, is it? Renee and I, like I am 100 pounds heavier than her. We like year round, we like scaled like that. So if she eats the same amount of food as me, like, yeah, she's going to have like a bigger weight spike than me and too much of a weekly gain. So when you're going out with your significant other, and you probably know like, yeah, my guy can eat so much and it's not fair, but that is, you're just a smaller person. So that's extra calories are going to go a lot farther than what it would for him. So you need to be able to eat within your off season that still keeps you on track for your physique weekly rate of gain, and not let that overshoot you. I've coached some females where they go out for their date night, and it's like that's the only time they gain weight. The next 2 days after that, the weight sticks, and the rest of the time they're like at maintenance calories or less, and it just adds up to being a pretty unproductive off season. So really want more of that daily slight calorie surplus to happen, and then being able to manage like through flexible eating on the weekends or macro matching and things like that, to where you can have the flexibility, but it still doesn't overshoot you in weight gain, because that's quickly where you run in the spot where you just run out of body fat needed to play with in the off season before you need to diet back down. So I think that's just like the one unique thing in females that you do need to consider, is that just they're smaller, means less food, means like the surplus can easily go farther than what you want it to, just because it's easy for calories to sneak in. When in a larger male, there's a little bit more forgiving. It's the percentage of calories is just smaller there.
Yep.
Other things that you think might be limiting a female in the off season, Luke, we touched on training, some mindset pieces around, letting body fat increase and not getting overly focused on the scale, nutrition, the hormone status. That's pretty encompassing, but anything else that jumps out to you?
Just a small thing. I think females chat. Y'all are great, but you chat. And I think it diverges into multiple opinions coming at females sometimes. And like staying focused on the daily tasks and the things that you can execute on and the conversations that you have with the person that you work with is huge. And I would just leave it at that.
Yeah. On the social side, around that too, it's social media pressure for females is, I feel like it's a lot different than males to a degree. I know you can, we get it too. Like we're all judged, but with the female side, especially with the more muscle you add, it's easily to get like discouraged away from doing what you need to in the off season. And there's a lot of females too that are just putting out unrealistic expectations of what an off season should look like. And there's editing happening of females on these pages. There's females that only take all their videos and photos like close to prep time or during their prep. And that's what they post year round. So you're like, man, this female, she's making progress, but she just stays lean year round. Like, I think that's what I need to do. And that's just not what's happening. It's just a lot of like misguidance out there for females. And realize too, you just have to you're unique to your own self. So the progress has to be measured against you. There's an array of genetics out there, and a lot of these girls that are at the very, very top, whether you're top 5 wellness pros out there, whatever, whoever they may be, not to pick on them specifically, but just say the top in any division, they can very well be the genetic outliers. So when you look at how they manage their off season, how their training looks, they might just only have to pull like some of the low hanging fruit, and that's enough for them to be at the top. And so they might do a lot of things that no one else is going to be able to get away with. Like, well, man, they eat like pizza all prep. They probably don't do that, but or they're doing these pump workouts or whatever it may be, and that is enough for those genetic freaks to like look the way they do. And it's not fair, but for the majority of us, you need to look at probably more what the averages are needing to do. And that's when you have coaches that see them across the board. And we coach some of the anomalies, and it's incredible. And when we put those anomalies in the same type of programming structure of like what we're telling you right here in this podcast, and where we put more of the average lifter on, that's where you get whatever, the Keons or the amazing things that you see out there that just could dominate classes. But for those of you that need clarity, especially around training, this is why Luke and I created the Hourglass program. And if you're a guy out there, you might have been familiar with our X-Frame program, which is built specifically for bodybuilding, classic physique, also for the women's division, figure, WPD, women's bodybuilding. And it had great success. And we have videos that accompany those training programs as well, and a lot of flexibility to customize it to what a male division might need. Well, our Hourglass program is what we created more for bikini wellness and fit model. And the structure being, what do you need to truly bring your waist to a small size? Priority point of building out glutes, legs that balance with glutes, and give you like an hourglass structure. That's why Hourglass is the name. And so Luke and I have built this based on all of his work, making progress. Like it's not just a in theory type of program. Like this is what we use for what we've taken amateurs to pros with, and also give you flexibility of different training splits within the program. So if you need more quad or you need more glute or you just need more overall, we have a segment that you can work with. It's a 10-week block and it's progressive. So it teaches you how to move up and progress week by week to continue moving up stimulus. And we even give you some volume options in it too, that if you recover more than another female, well, we tell you what to do from there. I think the big value point too is like we took my wife, Renee, and we shot videos doing all of these exercises. So you have the guidance to watch how Renee does them, and we give you some cues and setup tips that can help you. Just like we say, like, we don't want to just give you the Excel spreadsheet. Here's your sets and reps, go do it. We want you to see how it should be done with the helpful cues along with it. So that is the Hourglass program. It's on j3university.com. You can put in the show note links below. But if you need guidance for a program that truly works, that can help you build the Hourglass figure, highly recommend it. Anyway.
Next week.
You had something else to add, Luke?
No, you just nailed it. I don't need to add anything else. I just need to know what we're talking about next week.
Then for next week, what we'll be covering is the off-season look. How lean is too lean, but also how do you make lean progress and still add muscle on? Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you next week.